best class I ever had. I got my best grade in that class. And in looking back, I can see why. Because instead of just talking about something that happened, he would, in those days they could smoke, by the way, he would light up a cigarette and he'd sit on the edge of the desk and he'd say, well, you know, when Abraham Lincoln was a boy, and he would start talking about it. And then he would say, in those times, this was the economic condition, and this was the political condition, and this was the religious condition. Now, he wasn't talking in a linear fashion, saying, well, you know, here was the political, and then here was, it was all in the same time frame, but he covered three major subjects. And that's what made that particular event in history important. I've often said I could care less that Columbus sailed in 1492. It means absolutely nothing to me, and I doubt that it means anything to you. But when you find out why he sailed, when you found out his drive, when you found out what his economic conditions were in those days, political conditions, religious conditions, because that was one of the big things, they were taking religion around the world. So when you start understanding that, now all of a sudden you understand that particular time in history was important. Yes, it was the time Columbus sailed, but more importantly, what was going on around that event. And that's how the book of Revelation is laid out. So when we look at it, you'll notice at the top it says heaven. We're going to look tonight, and we're going to get an overview of what's going to happen in the next 7 years. And now, those of you who were in my, what was the class we just finished? Nehemiah. If you were in my Nehemiah class, how many times did a chapter open and it just said, Nehemiah rebuilt the walls? And then it would go back and say, and this is how he rebuilt the walls. So you had this opening statement that said, this is how it was done, or this was done, and then go back to the details of how that was done. So we're going to open tonight with an overview of the book of Revelation. The next 7-year period is what we're dealing with. And then we're going to look at the events as they have a heavenly view. This is not, you'll notice it doesn't say anything about the earth. It talks about things that are in heaven that's going to affect the earth. All right? Then we're going to move into the next section, which starts actually in Revelation 8, which we will start tonight. We'll go through chapters 6, 7, and 8 tonight, so we're going to move through a lot of verses. But that's going to be religion, and we're going to look at the religion that is on the earth. What's going on down there? And then we're going to look in Revelation 12, we're going to look at the politics. And this is where we get into our old friend, the Antichrist, and the 666, and the beast, and all of that. Those all have to do with politics. And the last thing politics. The last thing we're going to look at, it starting in Revelation 15, will be the economics. What's happening economically in this judgment? Okay? So keep these in mind as we go through, and it will make the study so much easier for you. When they taught it to me, they taught it all as linear, you know. We had 7 seals, and then you had 7 trumpets, and then you had 7 bowls, and they all came one after the other. Well, I got to looking at how many people were killed, and there was nobody left. And I said, that doesn't make sense. You know, and even the instructors would say, well, you know, well, this could be, well, that could be. No, there's no could be's. We have to figure it out. When I finally stumbled onto this, I think it answered all the questions. All right. So let's get started. Revelation chapter 6, beginning with verse 1. Now I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard one of the 4 living creatures saying with a voice like thunder, come and see. And I looked, and behold, a white horse, and he who sat on it had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he went out conquering and to conquer. When he opened the second seal, I heard a second living creature saying, come and see. Another horse, fiery red, went out, And it was granted to the one who sat on it to take peace from the earth, and that people should kill one another. And there was given to him a great sword. And when he opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, "Come and see." So I looked, and behold, a black horse, and he who sat on it had a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and the wine." When he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature saying, "Come and see." And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and the name of him who sat on it was Death, and Hades followed with him. And power was given to him over a fourth of the earth to kill with the sword, and with hunger, and with death, and by the beasts of the earth. All right, so we look at this view. Now, we've already looked at the little book, right? What is it? The book is what? The deed to the earth. The deed to the earth. Deed to creation, if you will. Who's holding it? Who's holding the book? Who? The Lamb. Well, it's not the Lamb with his little hoof out there. It's a strong arm. But the one who could take the book was the Lamb. And it says he took the book. Who's the Lamb? Jesus. And remember, nobody could open the book. Jehovah could not open the book. El, one of the highest names of God, could not open the book. Theos, the Almighty, the most powerful, could not open the book. No matter what you call God, he could not open that book. The only one who could open it was the Lamb. Why? Because he purchased it. So here he is, and now what happens? He reaches up, and he takes the first seal off. And out of heaven comes this white horse. Who's on the white horse? Anybody? Antichrist. Now, there are some that says this is Jesus riding out. But let's take a look at this guy who's on this horse. There are some special things about him. He has a bow, a crown, and he went out to conquer and to conquer. The crown is a crown of royalty. That's leadership. That's being the head honcho. And what will the extent of his kingdom be? Well, there are those that says it's the entire earth. So we have to be careful and look for the Antichrist. How many of you have heard that? We need to watch for the Antichrist, right? Could be. It could be. But, okay, the terms that's used here, all men, all kindreds, all that dwell, etc., are used several times in scriptures and do not refer to the whole earth as we know it today, but it refers to the biblical world of that time. Nebuchadnezzar was said to rule over the children of men wheresoever they dwell, Daniel 2:38. Greece, according to Daniel's vision, was to rule over the earth in Daniel 2:39. Rome was shown to devour the whole earth in Daniel 7:23-24. And yet they did not rule over even all the countries that were present in that day. They didn't rule over India, Pakistan, what is now Pakistan. And they certainly didn't rule over the Indians here in North America or South America or Central America. So this term, the whole earth, really refers to the area of the biblical area that they lived in. All right. So we're going to look at that in a little bit. Now, the bow is a symbol of power. It's also a symbol of victory in Psalms 7 and 12. It's a symbol of falsehood and deceit in Psalm 64, 3-4, Hosea 7:16, and Jeremiah 9 and 3. God, it says this is in 2 Thessalonians, God will send a strong delusion. So all the unrighteous who did not receive the truth will be deceived and believe his lies. 2 Thessalonians 2:10-11. He will destroy both the mighty and the holy people and cause deceit will prosper in Daniel 8:23-25. This is what it says. In the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors have reached their fullness, a king shall arise having fierce features, who understands sinister schemes. His power shall be mighty, but not his own power. He shall destroy fearfully, and shall prosper and thrive. He shall destroy the mighty, and also the holy people. Through his cunning he shall cause deceit to prosper under his rule, and he shall exalt himself in his heart. He shall destroy many in their prosperity. He shall even rise again, the Prince of Princes, but he shall be broken without human means. It's according to Daniel. So what he will rule over is the old Roman Empire. So if we want to know pretty much who is going to be affected, look at the old Holy Roman Empire. And that's Europe and most of the Middle East. It did extend over into Britain, at least for a short while. And so when we look at that, we begin to put together this place where the Antichrist is going to rule. Okay, this is going to be his territory. This is the feet of the image that was seen by Nebuchadnezzar. By the way, this is him. I got to catch up to myself here. I got these big stars and I still can't see them. Here's the Antichrist going out. But in the image, you'll notice the feet. And this was feet that was made of clay and iron mixed. So it was not strong. It's not going to be a kingdom that's, like the Roman Empire, which was, just crushed everything under its blow. That's not going to be the rule of Antichrist. It's going to be the same territory. It's going to be the old Roman Empire, if you will, revised. But instead of having that rule of iron that just beats everything down, he is going to be more a ruler of deceit, and he will let people destroy themselves rather than him having to destroy them. And we'll see that. Remember, one of the horsemen, we'll look at that in a minute. All right. The beast will rule for 7 years. Now, the first 3.5 years will be peaceful, but he will turn on Israel and try to annihilate them during the last 3.5 years. Remember, this is judgment on Israel. For that first 3.5 years, he is going to build a covenant. In fact, let me read it to you. It's found in Daniel 9:27. Then he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. But in the middle of the week, he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering, and on the wing of abominations shall be one who makes desolate, even until the consummation which is determined is poured out on the desolate. So what he's going to do is make an agreement with Israel. Now, this looks, if we just look at it, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But look at the world today. Now, we follow Israel pretty closely, and there's a broadcast on TV, and it's called The Watchman. That's very interesting. It's news about what's going on in Israel and so on. The big concern in Israel right now is Iran. Not only Iran, but all of the puppets that Iran controls. You have Hezbollah, and you have all of these outfits, and literally Israel is completely surrounded right now with Iran's puppets. And so their main concern is when are, and they say it's not if, it's when. When are they going to start an invasion? When are they going to really come at us? That's the question. And by the way, if you've ever heard of the Abraham Accords, they are building agreements with some of the countries. And if you look at these countries that these agreements are with, they are all Arab countries. Now I say that because Iran is not an Arab country. Iran was originally Persia. The Arabs come from who? Ishmael. And they are, in fact, the children of Abraham, just like Israel is the children of Abraham, except through Isaac, Abraham and Isaac, the promise was given of the Canaan and God's pouring his blessing out. But you have that other leg over there, Ishmael. And God warned Israel, don't come against the children of Ishmael. So they're under God's protection also, and what I find is so interesting that all of these agreements that they're making with, what is it, the place you talk about over there all the time, Haran or whatever it is, I can't, yeah, all of those countries that are so rich in oil and they're so small, they're making these agreements. You see, God is laying everything out. He's putting together those that he is going to protect, and those he is not going to protect, he's allowing to come under the influences of the spirit of Antichrist. And the spirit of Antichrist is for the absolute destruction of Israel. Okay, so if that's clear. So what's going to happen here is there's going to be a ruler who's going to rise up. He's going to make an agreement and say, okay, we're not going to attack you. We're going to have peace and prosperity, and we're going to agree on all these economic, and we're going to work together. And oh, by the way, you can build your temple now up on the Temple Mount. And by the way, it was never built where the Dome of the Rock is. Archaeologists now have proven that it was at the other end where the Mosque of Agassi, I think it's called, where that is. And that's a secondary mosque. It's important to Islam, but it's not that important. And it's about to fall down anyway. That's where they will build the temple. So the next temple will be built. Everything will be peace and everything will be fine. That's going to happen in those first 3.5 years. In the middle of the 3.5 years, he's going to cancel the covenant that he's made. He's going to turn against Israel. He's going to set abominations up in the holy place. He's going to do a whole lot of stuff. And that's where we are going to see the book of Revelation, as we're going to go through it. These judgments all occur in the last 3.5 years. Okay? So let's keep that time frame in mind. All right, the second horseman rides out, and that's war. War. Thus he said, the fourth beast, this is Daniel again, Daniel 7:23, shall be a fourth kingdom on earth, which shall be different from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, trample it, and break it in pieces. So he's going to win everybody's confidence. He's going to set up his kingdom, and then he's going to trample everybody. He's going to, and we'll go through this as we go. You'll see how all the countries will pledge to him to keep from being annihilated, basically. Okay? All right. The third seal, famine, a penny. This just shows you how bad this is going to be. They have this famine, and I heard in the midst of the four living creatures saying, a quart of wheat for a denarius, 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and the wine. What's it talking about? A denarius was a day's wage. So if a whole day's wage, and you'll get a quart of wheat for a whole day's wage. Or you can get 3 quarts of barley for a day's wage. Now, the measure was 1 meal's worth. So you're going to get 1 meal, and you've got to divide it 3 times in order to make it last over the day, if you eat 3 meals a day. All right. And he says, hurt not the oil and the wine. What is that all about? Why wouldn't they hurt the oil and the wine? Commerce. Commerce. Oil, wine. Of course, in Daniel's day and in John's day, the oil was olive oil. What is it today? Oil, pumping out of the ground. Right. And olive oil, by the way. They're still the largest producers of olive oil. And the wine. These are things that are traded. This is the foundation of the economy. And that's what it's really representing, the foundations of the economy. All right. The 4th seal is death. Notice that Hades, or the place of the dead, will accompany him. The numbers of dead will make it seem as though the earth has become a place of the dead, or Hades. That's how horrific this is going to be. We're going to look at some numbers here in a minute, and you'll see exactly what we're talking about. All right, in fact, it's right here. If the entire world is included, it would be over 1.7 billion people killed in this 3.5 years. If it is only restricted to the biblical land, it would only be 121 million. Huge numbers. All right. Let's look at the 5th seal. Here's famine and death. All right. Verse 12, and I looked when he opened the 6th seal, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood, and the stars of heaven fell to the earth as a fig tree drops its late figs when it is shaken by a mighty wind. Then the sky receded as a scroll when it is rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved out of its place. And the kings of the earth, the great men, the rich men, the commanders, the mighty men, every slave and every free man, hid themselves in the caves and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath has come, and who is able to stand? This is the end. Huh? What? I'm sorry, I'm missing you. What was that again? Oh, I missed one? Oh, yes, I did. I'm sorry. Thank you. Should throw something at me. Well, I moved this up, and sometimes it jumps. Let's go back and pick up verse 9. When he opened the 5th seal, I saw unto the altar the souls of them who had been slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, how long, O Lord, holy and true, until you judge and avenge our blood on those who dwell on the earth? Then a white robe was given to each of them, and it was said to them that they should rest a little while longer, until both the number of their fellow servants and their brethren who would be killed as they were was completed. Okay. So what we have here is the view is now, for this particular portion of Scripture, it leaves heaven, because there is in heaven no altar. You know, we talked about that last week. So the view now is of a heavenly altar. Okay? And notice what it says. And we'll talk about this as we get further into all of this. that this is an earthly altar, and the area it's talking about was under the altar. It's where the blood of the slain animals collected. So the altar had under the middle of it this like a large pan or whatever you want to view it. And so as they would kill the animals, the blood would drip down into this pan, and it was so they could collect that, of course, and get rid of it. And there wasn't blood everywhere all over the floor. I'm sure there was enough of that anyway. But that's what this is looking at. And since the altar was a fixture in Jewish worship, this would indicate Jewish martyrs. The cross is the equivalent to the church. It's where the blood of Jesus Christ was slain. So if this was talking about Christian martyrs, it would have something to do with the cross. But the altar meant something to the Jews. And so what was happening was there was a sacrifice being made, and the blood was collecting under the altar. And who were being offered as sacrifices? The martyred Jews. All right? Now, it doesn't say that these were, and I want to use the term kind of loosely here, saved Jews. In other words, these were not necessarily Messianic Jews. These were Orthodox Jews. They followed the Lord. They believed in God. They followed the law. You can see them in Jerusalem. They put us to shame. They spend their days worshiping, praying. When they're not working, they go down and they pray at the wall or in the library. And you see them, and they go like this for, I don't know how their back can take it. And they pray. And I was in the library down by the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem. And here they were, and they had books propped up, and they've got their glasses on. And some of them were sitting there like this, reading. And some of them were sitting there like this. I said, now that's me. That's me. But they're there all the time. These are the ones that are slain, and their blood is found under the altar. These are martyrs that sacrifice their lives for the word of God and for their testimony. Oh, you mean the Jews have a testimony? Yes, they do. Yes, they do. They've always had those that have a testimony. They're the ones who, when Israel strayed away from God, there were those that cried for mercy. There were those that asked God to intervene. These were the ones who had a testimony. And if you don't think so, go through the Old Testament and just look at all the testimonies. If you want a real one, go look at my friend Gideon. Yeah. All right. Now notice what they cry. They cry for vengeance. They're crying for vengeance, just as the blood of Abel cried from the earth unto God in Genesis chapter 4. Now notice what they get. Each is given a white robe, which is a sign of purity. They must rest until all the martyrs have been slain. Now, this can refer to all the martyrs since the destruction of Israel, or only to those slain under the rule of Antichrist. It doesn't say. My personal opinion is that this is all the martyrs that have been slain, the Jewish martyrs who were faithful, who died in Hitler's camps, who died, earlier in all of the atrocities that's happened to the Jews. These were those who held firm to the truth as they knew it and the law. And God is telling them now, wait, notice they are given white robes. They are not given crowns. They are not given any sign of being rulers. Just white robes. That separates them from the church who was given what? Crowns and white robes. Priests and kings. All right. Now, we've read it already, verse 12 to 17. the opening of the sixth seal. And this is the end or total destruction of the earth as detailed in 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 10. It says, But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens will pass away with great noise, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. Both the earth and the works that are in it will be burned up. So, just as God destroyed the earth with a flood because of the sinfulness of man, he will do it again, only this time with fire. So, we now have gone through at least a summary look at what's going to happen in this 7-year period. Okay? So, we know during the 7 years, the Antichrist is going to appear. He's going to rule peaceably for 3.5 years. Then he's going to bring complete chaos and destruction. And that's going to cause famine, and it's going to cause death. Notice the thing that I think is important to note is just a little thing. But under the seal of death, of the horseman of death, it says he causes them to kill each other. It's just not the army that's going to go out and do it. They're going to kill each other. And I think we see some of that among the nations that are fighting between each other and all of it over in that particular part of the world. They're going to kill each other. And I just want to point something out, that anytime Satan or his emissaries are ruling, it's going to end in death. Every time. It doesn't matter. It started with the serpent. It ended in death. And we're seeing now the last days, it's the Antichrist. It ends in death. Nothing that Satan does will ever end in life. Always ends in death. All right, now we come to what can be considered to some people controversial. To me, it's just as clear as the most expensive diamond you can find. But we find it in Revelation chapter 7, beginning with verse 1. After these things I saw 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, or the sea, or any tree. Then I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God. And he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels, to whom it was granted to harm the earth and the sea, saying, Do not harm the earth, the sea, or the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God on their foreheads. And I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel were sealed. Of the tribe of Judah, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Reuben, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Gad, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Asher, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Naphtali, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Manasseh, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Simeon, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Levi, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Issachar, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Zebulun, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Joseph, 12,000 were sealed. And of the tribe of Benjamin, 12,000 were sealed. All right, so these 4 angels. Oh, up here. Wrong one. There we go. These 4 angels are given the task of bringing judgment on Israel and on the earth. In Daniel 17, they are seen as stirring up the great great sea, or Gentiles, from which rise the great Gentile empires. So these angels are not just sitting here waiting for the command to bring judgment in the last day. They actually have been working ever since the fall of Israel, because they, in fact, before them, it was from the churning. These same four angels are seen churning up the sea. The sea represents Gentiles. And from this sea comes the four empires that we talked about, all right, in Nebuchadnezzar's image. Actually, 5. So these are the ones that's come up. So these angels have been at work, but they're being now restrained from bringing the final judgments on the earth. This tells us this is going to be a Gentile judgment. Not a godly judgment here, but a Gentile judgment. In other words, it's going to come through the Gentiles to judge Israel. We're not talking about the church. The church is gone, and we're floating around on our clouds with our little harps, and we're having a good time, okay? But this is on the earth. Who's left? Antichrist. Who is Antichrist? Gentile. He's not a Jew. All right? They're standing at the four corners of the earth, thus controlling all the earth. The winds they're holding are associated with destruction and judgment. And I think I put all the scriptures on there for you. 1 Kings 19:11, Job 1:19, so on. So here we have these four angels standing there. They're being held, and they're holding the winds that's going to bring final destruction. So here they are. All right, then we see this angel. Now this is another angel. And this angel, it's back on the other. This angel ascends, and he's the one who is holding the seal of the living God. Who is this angel? What does angel mean? Messenger. Messenger. So let's take the word angel out, throw it away, and say, who is this messenger? Who holds the seal of God? There's only one that can hold the seal, right? We've already seen him. He purchased the deed with his own blood, and when he did, what did he do? He sealed that deed. He's the only one that can open that deed. And now we see him ascending from the east, holding the seal, saying, hey, I'm the one that sealed this whole thing. I'm the one that purchased it, and I'm the only one that can judge it. That's the symbolism that we're seeing there. Okay? All right. So what does he do? He orders the four to hold their judgment until the 144 are marked or sealed. Now we see this same scene in Ezekiel chapter 9, beginning with verse 4. And the Lord said to him, go through the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem, and put a mark on the foreheads of the men who sigh and cry over all the abominations that are done within it. To the others he said in my hearing, go after him through the city and kill. Do not let your eye spare, nor have any pity. Utterly slay old and young, maidens and little children and women, but do not come near anyone on whom is the mark, and begin at my sanctuary. So they began with the elders who were before the temple. Then he said to them, defile the temple and fill the courts with the slain. Go out. And they went out and killed the city. Now this is a vision that Ezekiel had, showing the exact same thing that we're looking at here. So we have the four winds, the four angels holding the four winds. We have Jesus who has the seal. And he's telling them, wait until we have sealed the 144,000. Ezekiel didn't know the numbers, and he didn't know for sure what was going on. John now has seen what's going on. He has that mystery revealed to him. And so he looks at them, and he said there's going to be 12,000 from each of the tribes of Judah. Now, the sealing of the 144,000. Oh, and by the way, the word in Ezekiel for mark is ta, T-A-U, which is the letter T, but it looks like a cross. It's just something to throw out, okay? But this is a fulfillment of Joel 2:28. And it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out my spirit on all flesh. Your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams. Your young men shall see visions. And also on my men servants and my maid servants I will pour out my spirit in those days. And I will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood and fire and pillars of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the coming of the great and awesome day of the Lord. You say, wait a minute. Day of Pentecost. Everybody looked like they were drunk, and Peter got up, and what did he say? This is that was spoken of by the prophet Joel. In the last days, saith the Lord, I will pour out of my spirit upon all flesh. He used that scripture because the last days started at the day of Pentecost, and it will end at the destruction of the earth. Who was this given to originally? Jews. There were some Gentiles there, sure. But when you look at it, they said this is given to who first? Jerusalem first. And then you're supposed to go to Judea. And then you're supposed to go to the uttermost parts of the earth. The outpouring of the Holy Ghost was originally meant for the Jew first, to fulfill Ezekiel. It's a mark. It's a mark. And God's judgment is not going to fall on those that are marked. Okay? Now, when we get to this part, and here the Antichrist is going to be revealed, now we see a particular group of people. Up until this time, the Jewish nation has rejected, for the most part, Jesus, the Holy Ghost, and all of that. And they've clung to their law. But there's going to be a revival that falls, and I personally think it's in that first 3.5 years, while the Orthodox Jews are building their temple, God is going to build temples inside of men. He's going to fill them with the whole, and there's going to be 12,000 from each of the tribes of Judah. By the way, there are no lost tribes. That's a bunch of hooey. You go over and ask a Jew, and he can tell you what tribe he's from. Ishkar, oh, I'm from Dan, oh, I'm Benjamin. They know where they're from. But there's going to be 12,000. Why is that so important? Because these are going to be the evangelists of the latter day. This is the revival of Matthew 24. Remember I talked about it, and I said it's not a revival for the church. It's not. The church is gone. He's answering 3 questions. And the question about the revival comes on what shall be the end of this age, our Jewish, the world, the end of the world, the destruction of the world. He said, we're going to have a revival. But it's the revival of the 144,000. Notice what's going to happen according to Joel. And I'll show wonders in the heavens and the earth, blood and fire and pillars of smoke and so on. This is destruction. All right. Notice that Dan and Ephraim are not included. Perhaps because Ephraim turned from God in the day of battle, in Psalm 79, 9-17, and 65 to 67, and Dan promoted the worship of idols. So it was a second tribe or family in that tribe that took the names. All right, let's look at verse 9. After these things I looked, and behold, a great multitude, which no one could number, of all nations, tribes, people, and tongues, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed with white robes, with palm branches in their hands, and crying out with a loud voice, Salvation belongs to our God, who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb. All the angels stood around the throne, and the elders and the four living creatures, and fell on their faces before the throne and worshipped God, saying, Amen. Blessing and glory and wisdom, thanksgiving and honor and power and might be to our God forever and ever. Amen. Then one of the elders answered, saying to me, Who are the ones, or who are these arrayed in white robes, and where did they come from? And I said to him, Sir, you know. So he said to me, These are the ones who come out of the great tribulation, and washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Therefore they are before the throne of God, and serve him day and night in his temple. And he who sits on the throne will dwell among them. They shall never hunger anymore, nor thirst anymore. The sun shall not strike them, nor any heat. For the Lamb who is in the midst of the throne will shepherd them and lead them to living fountains of water, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. You want to talk about a revival? You want to talk about effective evangelism? You want to talk about reaching our world? Look at this bunch. 144,000. And suddenly there is a number that you cannot number. And they're standing before the throne. And listen to what is so exciting. They worship the one on the throne and the Lamb. Who crucified the Lamb? The Jews. Who rejected him? The Jews. And yet here they are. A number that can't be numbered, standing before him. And the Lamb, who they crucified, who they rejected, the Lamb is in the midst of the throne, will shepherd them and lead them to living fountains of water, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Who are these? They come up out of great tribulation. Martyrs. Martyrs. I don't know about you. That gets me. When I think about the Jews and during the Holocaust and everything they went through, that's going to be what happens again under Antichrist. But look at the difference. They arise and they stand before the throne, and the sun isn't going to hit them, and the heat's going to bother them no more. They're not going to be hungry. They're not going to be thirsty. They're going to find out what Jesus told the little lady at the well in Samaria. I have water that you don't know about. It's a fountain that will keep you aerated for eternity. Oh, wow. I got to move on. So here they are, the 144,000. And all of those that heard their message. What a revival. What a revival. Compare this to the Church of Philadelphia, who has but a little power. All right. seventh seal. We're going into Revelation chapter 8 with verse 1. When he had opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. And I saw the seven angels who stand before God, and to them were given seven trumpets. Then another angel, having a golden censer, went and stood at the altar. He was given much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense were the prayers of the saints, ascending before God from the angel's hand. Then the angel took the censer, filled it with fire from the altar, and threw it to the earth. And there were noises, thunderings, lightnings, and an earthquake. So the seven angels who had the seven trumpets prepared themselves to sound. Ooh. What are we looking at here? What are we looking at here? That seventh seal. The seventh seal. Now, we're going to find something that repeats throughout. The seventh of everything announces what's coming next. All right? Nothing happens on the seventh seal, the seventh trumpet, or the seventh bowl. It, in fact, ushers in or introduces the next set of judgments. Right? Now, this is kind of what got me going on how the book is arranged. Because the sixth seal, the sixth trumpet, the sixth bowl, all talk about the destruction or end of the world. So he couldn't end the world, put it back together, judge it again, end it, put it back together, and judge it again. That's what would have to happen. So what we're looking at here, we have a view of heaven, and something is happening in heaven. There is silence. Why would there be silence in heaven? First of all, what is the only noise we know about in heaven? Yeah, who's worshiping? We looked at the throne last week, right? What did we hear? Holy, 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 holy. And we hear the 24 elders. They're throwing their crowns down, and they're shouting, and they're saying, the praise to God. And now we have a number that we can't even number. And what are they doing? They're up there, and they're singing the elders are singing a new song, and there's all of this praise and worship going on. And now all of a sudden, silence. Who's not there? All the saints? Well, I don't know that all the saints left. But what are they doing? They're worshiping God, right? Why would they stop worshiping God in the temple? He's not there. Yes. Yes. Now, where is he? Now, this is really tough logic. You have to think about this. No, the only reason there would be... I've heard people say, well, the awe of what's going to happen has everybody just waiting at the edge of their seats. Now, how would they know what's going to happen? The Bible says only God knows. So they wouldn't know, right? But if he's not there, there's nobody to worship. Now the question is, where'd he go? Oh, boy. Now, this thing, it says it happens for half an hour. And I just did some math just for fun. And when I tell you I do math just for fun, I mean, I spend a lot of time trying to figure this one out because math is not my thing. Anyway, there's 1 week is 7 years, right? We know that. In this prophecy, we're talking about 1 week equaling 7 days. 1 day would then equal 1 year, right? So 1 hour would be 15.208 days. So 1/2 an hour would be 7.604 days. So there's going to be silence in heaven for about 7.5 days. If you're crazy like me, you do this kind of stuff. What's going to happen in that time frame? Jesus gets up off of the throne. What's happened to that little book? It's open. Open. What's that mean? I've got the deed. What am I going to do? I'm going to go claim my property. I'm going to go claim my property. And if my calculations are right, for 7 days, he's going to claim his property. Kind of keep that in the back of your mind. Now, this opening of the seventh seal, it ends the heavenly summary of the tribulation. We've, in a sense, had a camera in heaven seeing what was going on during the 7-year period. Heavenly views. This ends that. Now we get a view of this angel that stands before the throne. Let me go over a couple of things here for you. We see 7 trumpet angels. And these are standing before the throne. 7 trumpet angels. 7 is the number of completion. 6 is the number of man. 7 judgments will complete man. It's the completion of man. So it only takes 7 judgments. If it took, 6 judgments. If we went to a 7th judgment, that would have to be the completion of God. And there is no completion of God. That's why he said he rested on the 7th day. There is no completion. It just goes. But 6 will complete the history of man. Can I phrase it differently and say 6 will complete the history of sin? 7 trumpets, 7 bowls, 7 seals. All right. So here we have these 7 angels, and I like to think of them kind of military. I always like to watch the July 4th and Veterans Day and things on PBS, because they go to the Capitol, and they got the Marine Band there, and they've got all of the best of the best are there. And they always have these buglers with their banners off of their trumpets, and they're all standing there, at attention with their bugles, and they're standing there just waiting for the point where they bring up their bugles and they sound the sound. And they're standing there just like statues. And they're just waiting. They're counting the measures. They know where it is in the song, and they're just waiting for that time. And I see that same scenario, 7 angels standing there with their trumpets. And they know it's about time. And they're watching everything going on. And they're just waiting for the sound to bring up their trumpet and sound. Whew. Now I know they were probably shofars, but that's all right. I like the trumpet thing better. All right. All right, so we see them standing there. And then suddenly, the scene shifts. And we see another angel. He stands at the altar to take hot coals and put them in the censer to offer incense. Where does this come from? On the Day of Atonement, the high priest would go into the Holy of Holies. He would go over to the altar of incense, the holy place. He would go over to the altar of incense. He would fill the incense, the censer, which was a little bowl on a chain thing, and they would fill that with the incense from off of the altar of incense. He would then swing that as he opened the curtain to step into the Holy of Holies. That smoke, that incense, went before him. And he had in his hand not only the incense, but the bowl with the blood. And he would walk up to the mercy seat while the incense was filling the holy place, and he would sprinkle the blood on the mercy seat. And the blood of sacrifice mixed with the prayer and worship, and it came up to God as a sweet savor. That's what went on in the Holy of Holies. That's what made the sacrifice effectual. It wasn't just the sacrifice. It had to be mixed with prayer and worship. I want you to think about that. How often do we sacrifice and yet we don't mix it with prayer and worship? Take back to Sunday. If you haven't watched it, go watch that sermon again. Simplest sermon I think I've ever heard anybody preach, really. But look at the results, because it is true. True. It takes blood and it takes incense. All right, so number one, who is this angel? Who is the only one who could go into the holy place? The high priest, right? Who's the high priest of heaven? Come on. Who? There you go. Yes. It says he is our high priest. And you know what he does? He goes in and he takes his blood. Okay, we're talking symbols. He takes his blood and the prayers of the saints, and he mixes them together. And when he steps before God in that temple in the heavens, what is rising? A sweet savor. Okay? Because he is our mediator. Now, does he do this all the time? No. No. But we have to use the symbolism. He went in once with the blood, and it was offered with the praise and worship of his church, and therefore he stands as our mediator. But here he is. We see him again now as it comes to Israel. What does he do? I see him walk up to the altar of incense, and he takes and he fills the incense, the censer. And the incense is filling the room. And what does he do? He turns around and throws it into the earth. What we see here is the opposite. There were the praises, there were the adorations given to God, but where was the sacrifice? On the earth. You see, we have to understand some things about religion, and men are they're convinced. You talk to somebody from Islam, and they are convinced that Allah is God, and they worship. They pray more than we do, but there isn't the sacrifice. You go to the Hindus, and they pray to this existential something that's out there they don't even know. They don't even try to tell you what it is other than it is a something out there. And if you die enough, live and die enough times and are reincarnated to where your karma meets the right place, you join this whatever it is in the sky, and they pray and they burn their candles. You go to Thailand and they have the prayer wheels and they do all of these things. They're all praying and worshiping and praising something. And these things come up to God. But it's not a sweet savor because it's not mixed with the sacrifice that can only come when you worship the one true God and give yourself to him. They give themselves to somebody else, to some other God. I don't want to get too far into that. Somebody will misconstrue what I'm saying. I'm not saying those gods are real. Don't give me that, man. But he takes this and he throws it into the earth. Notice what happened. He filled it with fire from the altar and threw it to the earth. And there were noises, thunderings, lightnings, an earthquake. And then the seven angels were a measure before I'm supposed to play. They prepared themselves. I played trombone for years. I got a long passage to play here. Fill it up and boy, go for it. They're getting ready. Oh boy. We find out what happens. And by the way, just to give you a little picture of what I just covered, here is what it looked like in the holy place. Where the high priest would come into the holy of holies, or holy place rather. There would be the altar of incense up in the upper right corner. He would take the censer and he would go behind the veil, behind the curtain, into the holy place. By the way, the temple was only 60 feet long. It was much smaller than this church. It wasn't a huge complex. The outer courts were, but the temple itself was very small. All right. He throws the censer into the earth. Mercy has ended and judgment begins. For our brothers and sisters that stand there and say, God is a God of love, they need to come look at this chapter in Revelation. Because he is a God of judgment. And that makes his love all the more potent. You understand what I mean by that? By nature, he is a God of judgment. He is a God, a holy God, it says. A God who demands our full attention, separation, and holiness. And in turn gives us righteousness. And has given a way of escape for everybody through his love. But he is basically a God that is a holy God, a God of love, or a God of judgment. So when he loves, it makes his love so much greater. All right, so he throws it into the earth. What happens? Well, here we come. The first angel sounded, and hail and fire followed, mingled with blood, and they were thrown to the earth. And a third of the trees were burned up, and all green grass was burned up. Hail and fire, mingled with blood, falls from heaven. And 1/3 of the trees and the grass are burned up. This corresponds to the seventh plague in Egypt, which was hail mixed with fire in Exodus 9:23 to 26. Now, the term 1/3 does not mean 1/3 of everything on earth, but rather of a specific area. The plagues of Egypt did not affect the whole earth, but only the land of Egypt. The seven trumpets herald the judgment of Israel, and so were probably limited to the land of Israel and perhaps the old Roman Empire. So for just a moment, let's go back here to this slide. And what we're going to look at now are the seven trumpets. And we're looking at religion. Religion. We're going to look there first. You say, what does the grass and all of that have to do with it? Well, hopefully that'll get answered as we go through here. So the first thing that happens is we have the grass and so forth burned up. Hail, fire. Verse 8, then the second angel sounded, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea, and 1/3 of the sea became blood. And 1/3 of the living creatures in the sea died, and 1/3 of the ships were destroyed. Now, a great burning mountain is cast into the sea. And this burning mountain, whatever that is, all right, it kills, first of all, it makes the sea becomes like blood, and 1/3 of the sea animals die, and 1/3 of the ships and those aboard them die. Now, again, we're not talking about probably the whole earth. We're talking more than likely the Mediterranean Sea, the Sea of Galilee, that area, the Baltic Sea, perhaps, in that immediate area in there. So the term, as it were, indicates that the mountain is symbolic. And Jesus used this all the time in his parables. It was like as something, that meant it was symbolic. When he did not use that, it was fact. So when he says there was a man named Lazarus, and there was a rich man, that was not a symbol. That actually occurred. It's an actual occurrence that he was giving the report on. Here it says it's as it were. So this could be anything. It could be a volcano. There's some that look at it and say maybe an asteroid that crashes into the sea out there. I don't know. My crystal ball for that isn't kind of dusty, I guess. Or I have to clean it or something. I'm not seeing what that mountain is. God hasn't shown me what that actually is. But it's as a mountain, something huge that crashes into the sea. All right? The third angel sounded, and a great star fell from heaven, burning like a torch, and it fell on 1/3 of the rivers and on the springs of water. The name of the star is Wormwood. 1/3 of the waters became wormwood, and many died from the water because it was bitter. So we have this great burning star that falls in the rivers and the fountains of the deep. This could be a meteor that poisons fresh water. Now, how that would work, I'm not one that knows. It could fall into the Sea of Galilee, and it means it's poisoning the Jordan River, which produces a lot of the water for that area. It could fall into the mountains and pollute the water, because most of the water down in there comes from the mountains that are north of Israel. Up and around that corner is where the water collects, and that's where all the fountains in the desert and all, they all come on underground aqueducts that are there, natural aqueducts that brings the water down. I don't know. These are things I can't tell you those kinds of details. I can just tell you that's what it says is going to happen. All right. Its name is given wormwood. Now, wormwood refers to a very bitter plant that is native to Palestine. And you'll see that in Jeremiah 9:15, 23 and 15, and Lamentations 3:15 and 19. Wow. All right. I might make it on time tonight. Then the fourth angel sounded, and a third of the sun was struck, a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of them were darkened. A third of the day did not shine, and likewise the night. And I looked, and I heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, because of the remaining blasts of the trumpet of the three angels who are about to sound. So 1/3 of the sun, the moon, the stars are smitten. Now this means they lose a third of their light. Now this may not mean that a third of the stars disappear and half of the moon gets cut off, Rather, it could mean that the length of time they shine has been reduced. You say, how can that be? Well, if you go to Exodus chapter 10, verses 21 to 23, you'll find that at one point, the earth stood still. Pastor referred to it, in fact, in his sermon, when they were holding Moses' arms up. When the battle continued, it got close to dark, and so God turned the sundial back. You remember that? And there was another time when Hezekiah was granted more time to live, 15 more years. He asked for a sign, and God turned it back. He straightened things out that way, you see. God's good at that. But if the earth were to speed up, we would have 1/3, if it went a third faster, we would have 1/3 less light, right? Because of the rotation. So there's many that think this is probably more the case than at this point Earth's stars and a third of the sun dissipating. And just because of the construction of these things, when you think about a third of the stars, and we can't even get to the end of the stars to see how many are out there. We couldn't count them if we want to. They're into the quadrillions, whatever the word is. And a third of them dissipate. That wouldn't even make a dent in it, as far as we're concerned. So it's probably something to do with the rotation of the earth. These things all happen. Now, we're going to see these same things happening, only presented in a different view, a different idea, but affecting the same things. As we go into the bowls and we look at what's going on in those judgments. Now, these are the first 4 trumpets. There's 3 more trumpets to come. 3 more to come. All right, so we see this angel finally that's flying through heaven, and he's crying, woe, woe, because of the last 3 trumpets. And the last are these 3 woes show the intensity of the judgment that is about to fall on the inhabitants. When it says woe, woe, that means, oh, this is really bad. Do you think you've seen something? Wait till you see the next 3. And we're going to cover those next 3 next week. So that's it for tonight. I hope you're starting to kind of see how this book fits together. Right now, I'm sure your head's swimming and you're trying to figure, where did all this come from? But I think as we go through, it'll become much more clear, especially when we get to what is termed the parenthetical chapters. It used to drive me nuts. You got 7 trumpet judgments, and then all of a sudden you jump off and you're looking at something that's absolutely nothing to do with anything. And you're trying to figure, why would God put that in there? Well, we're going to find out it fits, if you look at it at the end of religion, We're going to see what happens to that religious system and how it is judged at the end of these trumpets and at the end of the bowls. We'll see how the economics are taken care of and the politics. All right, that's it for tonight.